All right, kiddos. So this is lesson 2 in our quadratics unit. And I'm just going to review what video 1 was about and review those discoveries that we created or made. And then we're going to use those discoveries to then learn how to factor. So right now, what we did in video 1 is we had some factored expressions, quadratic expressions, and we discovered a few things. And let's review real quick what standard form or expanded form is in for quadratics. It's going to be ax squared plus bx plus c. And technically it's equal to the dependent variable. Okay, so that's what a quadratic is right there, where a does not equal 0. Okay, but then we came up with some discoveries, and I want to talk about what we discovered first for the constant in the standard form and how we knew that by looking at the factored form. So we can determine what the c is by looking at the -3 here and the -1. So in this case, the c is going to be equal to -3 times -1, which equals 3. That's what we discovered in that first video. Okay, so I know my c is equal to 3. Okay, now let's talk about, I'm going to erase these highlights here, maybe. Now let's talk about what my b is going to be equal to. And it's still dealt with these two numbers, -3 and -1, the constants in each of the factors. So if you remember from our last video, the b is going to be equal to the two numbers, -3 combined plus -1. So my b is going to be -4. So I don't need to do the box method because I know my a term is going to be 1 because it's just 1x squared times 1x squared. So it's simply x squared minus 4x plus 3. Okay, and you can use the box method if you want to, but I would encourage you to try doing it this way. It's certainly going to help you when you're factoring to know what these relationships are and these patterns are. Okay, all right, so let's do the same thing here for this guy. He's a little blurry, isn't he? All right, so again, I'm looking at these two, the constant, each of the factors. So this is a factor, and this is a factor of the quadratic. Okay, and so I look at the constant in each of those factors. So -10 and +8. My c term is going to be the product of those. So -10 times 8 is going to be -80. I already know what my c is. And then my b term is going to be the sum of those two numbers. So -10 plus +8, so just +8. So my b term is going to be -2. Then I just have to stick an x on there. So again, I know my a is 1 because there's no coefficient of these x's. That's all we're going to be working with today is where a is 1. So x squared minus 2x minus 80. So now we're going to use that pattern and do the reverse. Now we're going to look at what is in expanded form and then create factored form. Okay, this is super, super important stuff you will use forever in math, I think. Okay, so let's look at the trinomial or the quadratic that's given here. Okay, my c term is -6. So whenever you get a quadratic, I encourage you to just write down everything. I encourage you to write down my a is equal to 1 in this case. My b is equal to -1. And my c is equal to -6. Okay? I know that when I put this thing in factored form, that the two numbers here and here have to multiply to equal -6. And I also know that the two numbers placed in those positions have to add together to equal -1. So I've created a little graphic organizer for you. I think it just makes it easier. So I'm going to get rid of these little things here. Okay, always identify them, just like I did there. A is equal to something, B, C, and so forth. Okay, so we need to find factors of our constant. This is my constant. Factors, because that means two numbers multiplied together. My constant is C. My constant is -6. So I'm going to put -6 here. Factors of our constant that have a sum of our linear. Have a sum of our linear. So what that means is we need to find factors of -6 that have a sum of -1. So two numbers together that equal -6 that have a sum of -1. So I've made this little kind of like a T-chart expanded. Maybe it's an H chart, I don't know. So we can just kind of list all of the factors of -6. So I always like to start with this. So -6, +1. Those two numbers multiply together to equal -6. You add them together, you get -5. I want -1. These are not it. Okay, so now I'm going to switch it. I'm going to do +6 and -1. Again, they multiply together to equal -6. They are certainly factors of -6. However, when you add them, you get a +5. That is not -1 though. That's what I'm wanting. I'm wanting it to be -1. So it's not that. Okay, now let's try 3 and -2. Okay, I multiply them together, they equal -6. I add them together, I get 1. It's very close. And when you get the same absolute value as what you are wanting, all you have to do then is flip the signs of the two factors. So this one's very close. It's not it. However, let's try the opposites of each of those factors. So -3 and +2. All right, so -3, ooh, they disappeared. +2. They are factors of -6 and they have a sum of -1. Okay, these are the guys that I want. This is what I want. So then all I have to do is take the -3, put it there. Take the +2 and put it there. I factored that. I factored that trinomial. Okay, you can certainly check it, right? So you could check it. You could use the relationships that we already discovered, that this times this has got to be the C term, so that's -6. We know that this plus this has got to be the B term, so that's -1 or -x, and we know it's x squared. These two are equal, okay? So this is the factored form of what I started with, okay? All right, let's do another one. And I like creating these T-charts, and I recommend that you do them as well, even when I don't create them for you. My kids always, in the past, have gone ahead and created them on their own. It helps them to stay organized, like a little graphic organizer. Okay, so let's look at this one. So here's my trinomial, my quadratic. And again, I have to find factors of my C value. So let's always identify. So A is 1. B in this case is 8. Okay, that's the sum. That's where we have to find the sum. And then C is -9, and that's where we have to find the multiplication, the product. All right, so I didn't mean to do that. It just does that sometimes. Okay, so we need to find factors of our constant, -9, that have a sum of our linear, +8. So again, factors of -9, this is the multiplication, that have a sum of +8, sum. Okay, so let's come up with some factors of -9. So like I said, I always like to start with 1 and then the number. So let's do 9, let's do -9, +1. All right, so certainly our factors are -9. However, when you add them, you get -8. That is not what we want. We want +8. So let's, again, that is the opposite of what we're looking for. So then I just need to do the opposite of the factors. So let's try 9 and -1. Okay, they certainly multiply together to equal -9, so they are factors of -9. And then when you add them, 9 and -1, you get 8. This is what I'm looking for. These are the ones that work because they have They are factors. You multiply them together, they equal -9. You add them together, you get 8. That's what I want. So then I take this guy, he's a +9. Take this guy, he's a -1. I just factored it. Again, you can check it. You can use your little box method to check it. You can check it any way that you'd like. But these two are equivalent. Let's look at another one. Need to find factors of our constant. So let's identify our A, B, and our C. So A is equal to 1. My B is equal to 5. That's what I have to add together to get. My C is equal to -24. That's what I have to multiply together to get. Okay, so factors of -24 that have a sum, this means plus, this means multiplication, sum of your linear, which in this case is 5. Okay, so factors of -24 that have a sum of 5. Okay, so let's think. 24 and -1, that's not going to be it, is it? They have a sum of 23. That's not it. If we did the reverse, if we did -24 and 1, it's going to be -23. Doesn't work. Let's try 6 and -4. That's 2. So if I did -6 and +4, that would be -2. That wouldn't work. 12 and -2. Nope, that's 10. Vice versa would be -10. Shoot. What else equals 24? Aha, let's try this. Let's do 8 and -3. They multiply together to equal -24. You add them together, what do you get? You get 5. There's our big winner. Okay, so you take each of the factors, the +8 and the -3, and you have factored that quadratic. And you can check it. Okay, now I have, let's see, this would be partner work in class. I have 3 more that I'm going to do together with you. I'm going to create my little T-chart. So always identify your A, in this case it's 1, your B is -7, and your C is -30. All right, and then so we want numbers that multiply together to equal our constant. Let's see, let's make this prettier. Let me erase that, it's kind of hideous. Let's do it in red too for giggles. All right, so numbers that multiply together to equal -30, but add together, because this came from that, but we want to add them together to equal -7. So let's find some factor pairs here. All right, so -30 and 1, -29, doesn't work. The opposites of these will not work. It'll be +29. Okay, let's do -15 and 2. All right, multiply together, -30, check, add them, -13. Doesn't work. The opposites of these will not work. It'll be +13. Okay, let's do -6 and -6, +5. Multiply together to equal -30. However, when you add them, they get -1. Their opposites would give you +1, so that's not what we want. What else is there? 15, 2, 6. How about 10, -3? Multiply together, equal -30. You add them and you get +7. Almost. So I just need the opposites of those two numbers. So these guys don't work, but their opposites will. So -10, +3, it's -7. Ding, ding, ding. That's what I wanted. I wanted factors of -30 that had a sum of -7. So go back down here. Gee willikers. Okay. So I already have my 2 parenthesis pairs set up, so I'm just going to put -10 and 1. So x minus 10 is one of the factors. The other factor is x plus 3. It works. Okay. Let's try this one. So numbers that multiply together, let's do a equals 1, b equals negative 16. That's what we have to add together to equal. And then c equals positive 39. That's what we have to multiply together to equal. Okay, so we have to multiply together to get positive 39. And we have to add together to get negative 16. Okay, does this one work, Mrs. Williams? Alrighty, I want you to think about it. So we always try, like, well, we know this is negative, and this is a positive, so it has to be two negatives multiplied together, right? So let's do negative 39 and negative 1. That doesn't work because that equals negative 40. 39 is odd, so it is not divisible by 2. Is it divisible by 3? What's 39 divided by 3? You're right. 13. Negative 13 times negative 3. And this is a common one you'll see. I'm expecting you to know the factors of 39. Negative 13 times negative 3 is positive 39. And the sum of those is negative 16. So negative 3 and negative 13 are the numbers that you want. So you're going to put them in your factor pairs. Okay. So this technique that we're doing right now is just going to work when a is equal to 1. I have a trick to show you when a does not equal 1. This is when a is equal to 1. All right, let's look at the last one. Identify your A, B, and your C. Your B is what you add. Your C is how you multiply. Okay, I want you to just think about that one. Numbers that multiply together to equal negative 29, but when you add those same numbers, it equals negative 28. What? Well, let's see, is 29 prime? I think so. So let's some numbers that multiply together to equal negative 29, but add together to equal negative 28. Can even do two columns here. So let's see. If it's prime, then that just means 29 in itself. And let's see, this is negative. So the bigger of the two factors needs to be negative. So negative 29 times positive 1. That equals negative 29 when you multiply it. And golly gee, it equals negative 28 when you add them. These are the two constants you will put in the factor pair. So x subtract 29, make sure you get the correct sign or it's not correct, and then plus 1. Alrighty, so I'm going to assign some on Math Excel for when a is equal to 1, and I want you to factor those. So if you need to make the little t-charts to help you, or they're kind of like h-charts, then go ahead and do that. I highly recommend that you do. I think staying organized will help you to make fewer mistakes, like I say so often. So write neatly on your paper or whiteboard, whatever you have at home, and make your little charts, and then try this out on Math Excel.